In a world of digital media where nothing is actually owned and things can disappear from your library any second, it's becoming increasingly common to lose access to a video game or movie that you've paid money for. And the world of VR isn't so different. There are actually a handful of very good VR games that have been delisted and in most cases just disappear from people's libraries. So that's why today we're going to check out the best VR games that you can't actually play. Let's go ahead and start off with one of the most famous ones, Marvel Powers United VR. Now, I recently did a video on the channel and was actually able to play some of this game, and there are methods to make this work, but officially it has been delisted. Marvel Powers United VR was designed as an online arena fighting game where you can join friends as your favorite Marvel heroes and fight against the villains of the Marvel Universe. Even though the gameplay itself got stale quickly, it had exceptional visuals on PC VR, and it's amazing to feel like you're actually becoming some of your favorite heroes. Like I mentioned, with some creativity, people have actually been able to make the game work, at least to some degree, but with the shutter of the Discord server designed for giving information on how to work due to the cease and desist order from Meta, it's not likely it's going to go anywhere. While Marvel Powers United VR might be one of the best looking and the most famous games delisted recently, Echo VR is by far the game that had the most backlash. Echo VR used to be a free online multiplayer game where you would play in zero gravity against other players. One team would guard one goal and one team would guard the other while trying to throw a disc through the opposing team's goal, all while floating in zero gravity, using objects to propel yourself, while also punching the opposing teammates in the head to disable them temporarily. It had a massive audience with a massive amount, maybe even 17,000 reviews, I can't remember, on the Quest store alone, and the shuttering of this game was a massive surprise because it was still fairly popular when it actually happened. But Echo VR definitely felt some ripples of anger through the community as people were forced to stop playing one of their favorite games that they've been playing for years. Speaking of playing for years, several years ago when the original Quest actually launched, or around there, Face Your Fears 2 was launched. And unlike its predecessor, which was on the Gear VR, it was a true 6 Degrees of Freedom VR game, allowing you to play through these scenarios that were filled with things designed to scare you to death and jump you as much as possible, whether you were playing through a section that had spiders and snakes, or you're playing through a ghost-infested section. There were actually light stories that you were playing through, and it felt more like a campaign than just a fear-based game. One theme you'll see on this list is that most of these games are Oculus Studios titles, and again, Face Your Fears 2 was an Oculus Studios published title, and it was also delisted out of the blue, just like many of these other games. Now, Face Your Fears 2 wasn't perfect, but it still had a place for people that were looking to get into VR and try out something fear-based, even though it hadn't been updated in a very long time. Another game that I actually really enjoyed that was from Oculus Studios and launched on Quest was the Dead and Buried 2 game, another follow-up to a Gear VR game, I believe, or at least a PC VR game, I'm not sure. Dead and Buried 2 is an online multiplayer Western shooter with a couple of different modes. This makes a little bit more sense being an online game and probably not having a large user base for the online servers to actually make it make sense. But again, another game that's been lost to time that I think actually was kind of ahead of its time, in the sense that there are very few Western games on the Quest, and I love the Western time period. Even though some of this was kind of steampunky Western, it was still quite fun. Another game that was actually semi-recently delisted is called BOGO. This was actually a free game and one of my son's favorite things to do back when we first got the Quest, and I know I've heard a lot of people saying that their kids love to play this game. This was a very cute animal kind of based game where you took care of BOGO. Now, it wasn't super long, it was free, and it was short. It was more of a showcase of how VR interactions worked, but it was still fun to be able to play and take care of this creature and have it play fetch. And the fact that it was delisted doesn't really make a whole heck of a lot of sense, because I think it should have just been updated. It wasn't using online servers. It's not that big of a game. It literally could have been updated with some new visuals, and then it would have been amazing. Alas, another Oculus decision to let it go, apparently. Dance Central also launched I believe, with the original Quest, and it's another title that's seen the axe over the years. I'm not even sure when this one was delisted or how popular it actually was, but I know back in the day people really enjoyed it. This is a dancing-based rhythm game with online multiplayer where you could actually go and hang out with people and dance. Sounds kind of a lot like what we've got with the new Dance City game that just released recently, although that game was probably a lot better and more polished, and it's an actual game based on a flat game that's already popular. But one thing you might be learning from this list is that over time, Oculus published titles can disappear. Now, that's a scary thing when it comes to a platform that has such big games as Batman and all these other Oculus published titles like Asgard's Wrath 2. Now, obviously, I don't expect them to be delisting any of those anytime soon, but the fact that the history shows games that were underutilized or underappreciated get the axe over time, it's not a great look, to be totally honest. This last game on the list is, again, an Oculus published title, but it's by the developer Insomniac. There was a span of time where Insomniac actually partnered with Oculus and was making some pretty great titles, even though all of them weren't great, and the Unspoken was one of them. This was all about arcane magic and fighting against other people, either online or in the short single-player campaign mode. Now, I personally haven't played this game because I didn't know about it until it was delisted, but I have spoken to a few people and they actually did enjoy the game. It had multiple classes and some pretty interesting looking enemies, plus an online multiplayer mode, which if it had launched on Quest probably would be a lot healthier, but this was launched before Quest even was around. But again, another title that was Oculus published that just disappeared entirely. Now, this game might be in some people's libraries. I'm not sure. I can't check. As far as I know, every game on this list is completely delisted. Not just unavailable to purchase, but not even available on the platform. Because I actually own Face Your Fears 2, and it's completely gone as far as I can tell, along with several of these other games. It's kind of a scary proposition when you think about the fact that we're living in a world where you don't actually buy goods, just the license to access them. So if a platform loses the rights to a specific game or movie, then you lose the rights to actually watch it, even if it's still online on another platform. And that's happened to me several times with movies on Amazon and other platforms where things have just disappeared from my library, even after having paid for them. I don't know about you, but that kind of scares me, and that's why I wish we could have physical copies of games again. I know consoles do that, and PC does that to some degree. I wish that VR had physical versions of games. I don't know how that would even work, but I wish I could go to the store and pick up a box of my favorite VR game that had a thumb drive or some sort of access that was not able to be removed. Because then I could go back and play all these games that are going to inevitably disappear over time, as the list is short now, but I'm sure it'll get longer, and not have to lose out on some of the things I've actually paid for. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this whole idea of losing access to things that you own and that you have paid for. Or not own, I suppose, you own a license to it. That's what they'll tell you, right, according to the terms of service, but things that you've paid for and feel you should have and own access to. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, happy questing.